Hey, people have been getting this super famous book wrong for 95 years, and I'm about to break it down. So today, we're talking about Ernest Hemingway's A Farewell to Arms. Published in 1929, this novel details the experiences of one Frederick Henry serving on the Italian front during the First World War. Frederick meets a woman, Catherine Barclay. They fall in love, escape the war together, then she dies in childbirth. A tragic love story and a reflection of the times, right? The novel is largely autobiographical after all. Just stick a pin in that fact, by the way, it'll be important later. SparkNotes certainly agrees with this interpretation of the novel, as does Study.com, even Britannica, and Reddit has asked similar questions and gotten similar responses to the novel's meaning. So, what's the big deal? Seems pretty straightforward, right? Well, here's the thing. The big secret. Frederick Henry is a complete and total POS. In the novel is Hemingway's confession for all the wrong that he's done. There's nothing tragic, and there's no real love in this story. A Farewell to Arms is not a love story, it's a confession. Frederick Henry is a liar, cheater, murderer, and all-around bad dude. That's why I'm about to show you how everyone is wrong about this book. Like most good novels, the author slips in a lot of subtle information right at the beginning. It's the sort of thing that's easy to miss, but as early as page 11, Frederick Henry tells you everything you need to know about what kind of person he is. So the following line is from Frederick's friend Rinaldi. "Do you think I would do right to marry Miss Barclay, after the war, of course?" "Absolutely," I said, and poured the basin full of water. "Tonight you will tell me everything," said Rinaldi. "Now I must go back to sleep to be fresh and beautiful for Miss Barclay." That night at the mess I sat next to the priest, and he was disappointed and suddenly hurt that I had not gone to the Abruzzi. He had written to his father that I was coming, and they had made preparations. I myself felt as badly as he did and could not understand why I had not gone. It was what I had wanted to do, and I tried to explain how one thing led to another, and finally he saw it and understood that I had really wanted to go, and it was almost all right. I had wanted to go to Abruzzi, he says later. I had gone to no place where the roads were frozen and hard as iron, where it was clear, cold, and dry, and the snow was dry and powdery, and hair tracks in the snow, and the peasants took off their hats and called you Lord, and there was good hunting. I had gone to no such place, but to the smoke of cafes and nights when the room whirled and you needed to look at the wall to make it stop, nights in bed, drunk, when you knew that that was all there was, and the strange excitement of waking and not knowing who it was with you, and the world all unreal in the dark, and so exciting that you must resume again, unknowing and not caring. So, first he tells his friend Rinaldi that Catherine Barclay is basically all his. As you already know, this is a complete lie. Second, he doesn't go to the Abruzzi, like the priest asked. Throughout the novel, the priest is one of the few genuinely good people that Frederick Henry meets. But, remember this, Henry is only motivated by sex and alcohol, and he wouldn't have found any there in the Abruzzi. Thus, he doesn't go. Third, he directly tells us who he is. How most people miss this is honestly astounding. Lots of info in here, right? But it sets up exactly what kind of person that we're dealing with here, proving all those previous interpretations completely wrong from the outset. Naturally, it gets far worse than this, so buckle up. I thought she was very beautiful. She was carrying a thin rattan stick like a toy riding crop bound in leather. It belonged to a boy who was killed last year. I'm awfully sorry. He was a very nice boy. He was going to marry me, and he was killed in the Somme. It was a ghastly show. Were you there? No. I've heard about it, she said. There's not really any war of that sort down here. They sent me the little stick. His mother sent it to me. He returned it with his things. Had you been engaged long? 8 years. We grew up together. And why didn't you marry? I don't know, she said. I was a fool not to. I could have given him that anyway, but I thought it would be bad for him. I see. Have you ever loved anyone? No, I said. We sat down on a bench and I looked at her. You have beautiful hair, I said. Do you like it? Very much. I was going to cut it all off when he died. No. Notice something off about that? Notably that he flirts with a girl immediately after she tells him that she's in mourning from the death of her fiancé. Here we establish the role of Catherine Barclay. When Frederick meets her, she is a broken woman. This is never really mentioned again, likely why the absolute hacks reviewing this book forget about it, but she does say that she quite literally grew up with this boy. He was her everything, and her life was defined by him up until just before Frederick meets her. I think any reasonable person can agree that that is going to leave someone in not the best state of mind. For the first time, she is feeling this kind of loss and doesn't know what to do with herself. Then comes Frederick Henry, happy to take advantage of a woman in a state of immense vulnerability. Hey, remember Rinaldi, the guy who remains a steadfast friend to the completely undeserving Henry for the entirety of the novel? Remember how he said he wanted to meet with and maybe get into a relationship with Catherine? Well, Freddie here doesn't give a damn. He wants some action, so he completely disregards his one true friend's greatest wishes. I remind you once again that people say Frederick Henry is a hero. We looked at each other in the dark. I thought she was very beautiful and I took her hand. She let me take it and I held it and put my arm around under her arm. No, she said. I kept my arm where it was. Why not? No. Yes, I said. Please. I leaned forward in the dark to kiss her and there was a sharp stinging flash. She had slapped my face hard. Her hand had hit my nose and eyes and tears came in my eyes from the reflex. I'm so sorry, she said. I felt I had a certain advantage. You were quite right. I'm dreadfully sorry, she said. I just couldn't stand the nurse's evening off aspect of it. I didn't mean to hurt you. I did hurt you, didn't I? She was looking at me in the dark. I was angry and yet certain, seeing it all ahead like the moves in a chess game. You did exactly right, I said. I don't mind at all. Poor man. So, my camera lady, my girlfriend, does a guy describing a relationship as a chess game, does that fill you with confidence and good feelings?
Cringe.
Cringe? Yeah, sounds about right. A real hero, this guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. A real class act, this Frederick. Tries going for some action again, and right away, too. He clearly knows that she's vulnerable and wants to capitalize on it ASAP. Some readers interpret his deflection and lack of anger at Catherine slapping him as genuine self-reflection. Instead, that and the chess comment just indicate that those readers would be vulnerable to the very kind of manipulation on display here. The only thing Henry is doing is proving he is sly enough to backpedal when he realizes he's screwing up. That's not the same thing as remorse. He even admits how little he actually cares here on page 35. Hello, she said. This she is not Catherine, it's another side character. Catherine asked me to tell you she was sorry she couldn't see you this evening. I'm so sorry. I hope she's not ill. She's not awfully well. Will you tell her how sorry I am? Yes, I will. Do you think it would be any good to try and see her tomorrow? Yes, I do. Thank you very much, I said. Good night. I went out the door and suddenly I felt lonely and empty. I had treated seeing Catherine very lightly. I had gotten somewhat drunk and had nearly forgotten to come, but when I could not see her, there I was, feeling lonely and hollow. Boy, this guy really knows how to value the women in his life. He knows exactly what he's doing. He admits he treats her lightly, and he never treats it any other way. This, if anything, makes him even worse. I mean, it's one thing to do a bad thing and not know it. Another entirely to do a bad thing, know it, and then continue to do it. Then, continuing on his classy behavior, he asks about Catherine, and then immediately thereafter about prostitutes. Have you seen Miss Barclay? I will bring her here. I will go now and bring her here. Don't go, I said. Tell me about Gorizia. How are the girls? Now you could fairly say, well, J-Bat, he's not directly comparing them now, is he? Well, maybe not, but he's still putting them in awfully close proximity. In fact, Catherine remains that close for the rest of the novel, especially at a key moment later on. Just hold on to that. We'll get there soon. Let's return to our boy Rinaldi. He's a champion and arguably the real hero of this book for putting up with all of Henry's BS. On page 57, he says, "Be good while I'm gone," I said. "I will send Miss Barclay. You are better with her without me. You are purer and sweeter. Oh, go to hell. I will send her. Your lovely, cool goddess, English goddess. My God, what would a man do with a woman like that except worship her? What else is an English woman good for?" Frederick Henry then goes on to call his friend Rinaldi two unique slurs for Italian people. It's clear here that Rinaldi maintains feelings for Catherine, even if it is in a bit of a weird way. Even so, at least, he is Ernest. He also has the respect to not chase her after she seems to have picked Frederick, even though he was clearly not shown that same courtesy. Another quick note is that Frederick's inconsiderate behavior is chronic and affects every aspect of his life. Example A is that he wastes all the money he's given and shows absolutely no gratitude. "The tickets are very expensive. I will draw a sight draft on my grandfather," I said. "A what?" "A sight draft. He has to pay or I go to jail. Mr. Cunningham at the bank does it. I live by sight drafts. Can a grandfather jail a patriotic grandson who is dying that Italy may live?" "Live the American Garibaldi," said Rinaldi. "Viva the sight drafts," I said. Now, you might wonder, well, J-Bat, his behavior is pretty bad at the beginning, but he gets better as love reshapes him, right? Well, no. "You sweet," I said. "Weren't you wonderful to come here?" "It wasn't very hard. It may be hard to stay." "You've got to stay," I said. "Oh, you're wonderful." I was crazy about her. I could not believe she was really there and held her tight to me. "You mustn't," she said. "You're not well enough." "Yes, I am. Come on." "No, you're not strong enough." "Yes, I am. Yes, please." "You do love me?" "I really love you. I'm crazy about you." "Come on, please." "Feel our hearts beating." "I don't care about our hearts. I want you. I'm just mad about you." "You really love me?" "Don't keep saying that. Come on, please, please, Catherine." When you're looking at it in this light, it's obvious he's just using her. How anyone can have made it this far and still think Frederick honestly cares about her for anything more than her body is beyond me. He doesn't even respect Catherine enough to tell her the truth when she starts asking about if he's been with other women. "How many of you, how do you say it, stayed with?" "None." "You're lying to me." "Yes." "It's all right. Keep on lying to me. That's what I want you to do." "Were they pretty?" "I never stayed with anyone." "That's right. Were they very attractive?" "I don't know anything about it." "You're just mine." "That's true, and you've never belonged to anyone else." "But I don't care if you have. I'm not afraid of them." "But don't tell me about them." "When a man stays with a girl, when does she say how much it costs?" "I don't know." "Of course not. Does she say she loves him? Tell me that. I want to know that." "Yes, if he wants her to." "Does he say he loves her? Tell me, please. It's important." "He does if he wants to." "But you never did? Really?" "No." "Not really. Tell me the truth." "No," I lied. The section is also another clear indicator of Catherine's vulnerability. She's in a near manic state, wanting to return to the security of the relationship that she used to have. For so long, she hasn't had to worry about being loved, and then when that gets taken away, she desperately, irrationally seeks out that feeling again and accepts Henry's answer of yes, even when, were she in her right mind, she would know that he's lying. There is one person in the novel who knows what's up, and that's good old Fergie. She knows exactly who Henry is and says it outright. "Will you come to our wedding, Fergie?" I said to her once. "You'll never get married." "We will." "No, you won't." "Why not?" "You'll fight before you marry." "We never fight." "You've time yet." "We don't fight." "You'll die then. Fight or die. That's what people do. They don't marry." I reached for her hand. "Don't take hold of me," she said. "I'm not crying. Maybe you'll be all right, you two, but watch out you don't get her in trouble. You get her in trouble, and I'll kill you. I won't get her in trouble." Of course, he then goes on to get her into trouble. I guess those reviewers from earlier forgot about Fergie, or they just weren't paying attention. Unfortunately for Fergie, her wisdom doesn't outweigh Henry's charisma in Catherine's mind. Like the readers who want to see this novel as just a tragic love story, Catherine sees Henry's exploitation of her as earnest affection. Henry's alcoholism also serves as a relatively consistent indicator of his actual state of being as a person. A male protagonist being an alcoholic is such a common quality in characters that is so often portrayed as nothing more than an aesthetic that the actual meaning behind the decision is pretty much forgotten about by most people. Hemingway wants us to realize that this is a problem and it does speak negatively of his character. One day while I was in bed with jaundice, Miss Van Campen came in the room, opened the door into the armoire, and saw the empty bottles there. I had sent a load of them down by the porter, and I believe she must have seen them going out and come up to find some more. They were mostly vermouth bottles, marsala bottles, Capri bottles. He goes on to list all of the other kinds of bottles. "Those are all brandy bottles, aren't they?" Miss Van Campen asked. "I can't see them all," I said, "but they probably are." "How long has this been going on?" "I bought them and brought them in myself," I said. "I have had Italian officers visit me frequently, and I have kept brandy to offer them." You haven't been drinking it yourself? She said. I have also drunk it myself. To give you a little break, I do want to include this one little portion, one of my favorite details about this novel. So this is while Henry's going to get some armaments to go back onto the field. Here he's talking with the lady who's running the armory. Have you any need for a sword? She asked. I have some used swords, very cheap. I'm going to the front, I said. Oh yes, then you won't need a sword. Now, this is just my World War I nerd, but by World War I, swords were so irrelevant that the only reason anybody would be carrying them around was to look good in pictures. So I just like that little detail. And, if you're actually going, you're probably not going to need it. Anyway, with that bit of levity done, now we're going to talk about Henry continues to do worse and worse things to Catherine. So the two of them check into a hotel on the short period of time before good old Henry's about to check back into the military, kind of go back. I went to the window and looked out, then pulled a cord that shut the thick plush curtains. Catherine was sitting on the bed looking at the cut glass chandelier. She had taken her hat off and her hair shone under the light. She saw herself in one of the mirrors and put her hands to her hair. I saw her in 3 other mirrors. She did not look happy. She let her cape fall on the bed. What's the matter, darling? I never felt like a whore before, she said. I went over to the window and pulled the curtain aside and looked out. I had not thought it would be like this. You're not a whore. I know it, darling, but it isn't nice to feel like one. Her voice was dry and flat. This was the best hotel we could get in, I said. I looked out the window. Across the square were lights of the station. There were carriages going by on the street, and I saw the trees in the park. The lights from the hotel shone on the wet pavement. Oh, hell, I thought. Do we have to argue now? This is a love hotel, guys. This is not a romantic place. This is where people go to bang and do very little else. Henry tries to evade this, and eventually both Catherine and the unwise reader come to believe him. But this scene, more than any other, tells us what's going on. Henry takes Catherine, at this point nothing more than a toy to him, to where guys go to have sex with some lady they're at least paying to do the deed with. Why does Henry stick with Catherine? Because she doesn't cost him anything, and nobody else gets to have her. I remind you once more, people call this a love story. Just, as for consistency's sake, he actually reminds us who he is again, just the page after what I just read you. I'm certainly yours, she said. After we had eaten, we felt fine, and then after, we felt very happy, and in a little time, the room felt like our own home. That, people in the audience who don't understand, is an innuendo for them having done the deed. And of course, Henry is happy because he got what he wanted. I remind you again, this guy loves booze and getting laid. Literally nothing else registers to him. On page 138, when he sends Catherine off as he returns to war, he barely even offers her a goodbye, giving her a passing thought as she departs, and doing honestly little else. I turned to Catherine. Her face was in the shadow from the hood of the carriage. We might as well say goodbye. I can't go in? No. Goodbye, Cat. Will you tell him the hospital? Yes. I told the driver the address to drive to. He nodded. Goodbye, I said. Take good care of yourself and young Catherine. Goodbye, darling. Goodbye, I said. I stepped out into the rain and the carriage started. Catherine leaned out and I saw her face in the light. She smiled and waved. The carriage went up the street. Catherine pointed in toward the archway. I looked. There were only 2 carabinieri in the archway. I realized she meant for me to get in out of the rain. I went in and stood and watched the carriage turn the corner. Then I started through the station and down the runway to the train. Some loving farewell. No hug, no affection, no anything really. Then, of course, he continues to prove his hero status as he returns to the war by calling Rinaldi an ape, going on to get several people killed with his terrible decision-making, and then some poor fool makes the mistake of giving him control of an ambulance. He decides he doesn't want to wait in line with the rest of his group, takes a detour, screws around, gets lost, and then falls in a ditch. When 2 of the men decide they don't want to assist in this absolute madness any longer, the following happens, his real shining hero moment. I order you to cut brush, I said. They turned and started down the road. Halt, I said. They kept on down the muddy road, the hedge on either side. I order you to halt, I called. They went a little faster. I opened up my holster, took the pistol, aimed at the one who had talked the most, and fired. I missed and they both started to run. I shot 3 times and dropped one. The other went through the hedge and was out of sight. I fired at him through the hedge as he ran across the field. The pistol clicked empty and I put in another clip. I saw it was too far to shoot at the second sergeant. He was far across the field, running, his head held low. I commenced to reload the empty clip. Bonello came up. "Let me go finish him," he said. I handed him the pistol and he walked down to where the sergeant of engineers lay face down across the road. Bonello leaned over, put the pistol against the man's head and pulled the trigger. The pistol did not fire. "You have to cock it," I said. He cocked it and fired twice. Our hero! If this isn't starting to drive you crazy, I don't know what to tell you. It's absolute insanity. So here's another analysis by lit charts for no reason at all. This one gets so close. But then it talks about a realization that quite literally never happens. I don't know how else to describe this other than the ultimate cope and seethe. People can't deal with Henry. You see, in all of fiction, it's a really rare thing for a protagonist to be static. Almost everyone changes quite a lot throughout the course of their journey. Luke Skywalker goes from farm boy to hero. Frodo goes from a harmless halfling to the savior of the world. It's the way we're conditioned to see characters. Even if they start the story as bad people, they eventually learn to be good, right? Not Frederick Henry. No matter how much people want his development to be there, it just isn't, and that's the point. Want some proof that Henry doesn't change? That his realization never happens? Well, Henry is motivated after his second escapade with the army to go find Catherine again. Bear in mind, this is fresh after him straight up executing that one guy. So he and the survivors wander the countryside before getting found out by a group of Italian deserters who are killing officers. At this point, Henry is only with an Italian, Piani, who has so far proven to be a pretty decent guy. So how does our brave hero help Piani through this dangerous situation? He doesn't. Instead, he jumps into a river and leaves his new friend for dead. When he does meet back up with Catherine, what is it that he thinks is grand about his now pregnant girlfriend? That she doesn't have morning sickness so they can have more sex. Just to continue rubbing it in, I'd say almost fruitlessly at this point, since some people want to like this guy seemingly no matter what, Henry can't even take a little joke as he and Catherine escape Italy by rowboat. Now the situation here, as I'm about to describe, is basically Henry using an umbrella to pull himself ahead with the wind like a sail. I braced my feet and held back on it, then suddenly it buckled. I felt the ribs snap on my forehead. I tried to grab the top that was bending with the wind, and the whole thing buckled and went inside out, and I was astride the handle of an inside-out ripped umbrella where I'd been holding a wind-filled pulling sail. I unhooked the handle from the seat, laid the umbrella in the bow, and went to Catherine for the oar. She was laughing. She took my hand and kept on laughing. "What's the matter?" I took the oar. "You look so funny holding that thing." "I suppose so." "Don't be cross, darling. It was awfully funny. You looked about 20 feet broad and very affectionate holding the umbrella by the edges." She choked. "I'll row." "Come on, man. It's funny." The two of them lived sort of uneventfully in Switzerland for a time, indulging in the same base pleasures that motivated Henry up until now. Many would read this as the fulfillment of the love story, where the two lovers get to spend some time together. Instead, it's really just Henry getting some alone time with his favorite girl. Then, of course, comes the last day that they spend together. You see, I've avoided the topic of Catherine's pregnancy up until now. That's because Henry does too. Really, he doesn't like that she's pregnant, and Catherine has been insecure about it since it makes her look big. To Henry, this child is just an obstruction to Catherine's beauty. So when his son is stillborn, this is all he has to say. A doctor came out, followed by a nurse. He held something in his two hands that looked like a freshly skinned rabbit and hurried across the corridor with it and in through another door. I went down to the door he had gone into and found them in the room doing things to a newborn child. The doctor held him up for me to see. He held him by the heels and slapped him. "Is he all right?" "He's magnificent. He'll weigh 5 kilos. I had no feeling for him. He did not seem to have anything to do with me. I felt no feeling of fatherhood. "Aren't you proud of your son?" the nurse asked. They were washing him and wrapping him in something. I saw the little dark face and dark hand, but I did not see him move or hear him cry. The doctor was doing something to him again. He looked upset. "No," I said. "He nearly killed his mother." Now here's the craziest part of it all. Everything else I've told you is absolutely nothing compared to the final action Henry takes in this novel. So remember how at the beginning of this video I told you that Henry is only motivated by sex and alcohol, and how I reminded you of that again a bit later on? Well, that's about to become important one last time. You see, Catherine dies in childbirth. Henry's reaction is certainly unique. He's definitely upset about it, sure, but if you've been following me up until now, you'll know that it's pretty much only because his favorite plaything is lost to him. Or maybe not. I'm just going to slip in this but at the very end of the book. You get out, I said. The other one, too. But after I had got them out and shut the door and turned off the light, it wasn't any good. It was like saying goodbye to a statue. After a while I went out and left the hospital and walked back to the hotel in the rain. The end. I want you, dear reader, to really, really think about what I just read. Turned off the light. It wasn't any good. Like saying goodbye to a statue. Folks, Frederick Henry is not a hero. He is not tragic. The only tragic figure here is Catherine for her manipulation at the hands of this absolute monster of a man. The only other tragedy is that now, almost a century later, people read this very same novel, process all the same words I just read to you, and come out thinking, man, I really feel bad for Frederick Henry. Well, I'll tell you what, I sure don't. What's the point? Why are those reviews wrong in not only missing Henry's role as a villain protagonist, but also saying the book is just about how bad the war was? It's because no quality story is really about so basic a concept of, it's a tragic love story, or war bad, aren't I smart? What makes A Farewell to Arms excellent is that it is a categorical takedown of the man Hemingway used to be, laid bare for the whole world to read about. That takes a great deal of self-reflection, and self-reflection is one of the most important qualities that a person can have. It took a lot out of me. It took a lot out of me indeed. But thank you so very much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you who made it this far. Please consider liking and subscribing and all that. You know the business. Feel free to comment below your own thoughts or ideas for future videos. I'll read them all. Until next time, this is J-Bat reminding you that true love is based on honesty, not manipulation.